All right, welcome everyone to this webinar about the customer journey and more specifically, a journey-centric customer journey transformation. Now, this is a mouthful and it's an interesting topic, and it's been a recent trend amongst companies that take customer journey and customer experience very seriously, where they transform their entire company around the journey that their customers make. So all the teams that are facing the customer journey are transformed in such a way that the customer experience has a journey-centric dimension to it. And that is what we're going to be talking about today. I'll be breaking down some of the central elements of journey-centric customer experience. And we're going to zoom into those elements a bit deeper. And in the end, we'll be sharing a couple of interesting behavioral insights that you can use in customer experience. My name is Philip Jordanov. I'm a cognitive neuropsychologist at Neurofied. My job is to translate insights from behavioral psychology and neuroscience and other social science fields to actionable solutions for clients. There are many questions in business and society that have a deep behavioral dimension. Customer experience is definitely one of them, which is why collaborating with the teams in customer experience is so interesting and such a fun thing to do as well. Neurofied is a behavioral science company. We specialize in behavioral change. So we help organizations change and improve with insights from brain and behavior. We do that through change programs. We do that through consulting. We also give a lot of training and development. And we have a very wide field in which we're active, since behavior is such a complicated and wide phenomena as well. So everywhere where there's behavior change, we would like to be as well. So today we're going to talk about the journey-centric customer experience. And a question that you want to have answered is, what does it mean to be customer-centric? And for everyone, that means something different. And for those of you who are live at the webinar right now, you can use the chat function and let me know what you think about this. And when you see customer experience and when you take it as a concept, it can mean many different things for many different teams as well. For example, we see that for UX and UI teams, they're very focused on creating what is called empathic UX and UI, really being able to see the world through their customers' eyes and making sure that they are completely immersed in their experience when they design. We have leadership on board on this as well. They want to be as behaviorally informed as possible when they make strategies, when they roll out tactics, to make sure that they completely match their target audience. It's also what is called behaviorally informed leadership. We have marketing and communication that is recently also focusing a lot on being inclusive in their communication and the way that they approach customers. How can you make sure that you tap into the full pool and potential of people that might be enthusiastic about your services or product? And then we have the hard side, the data side. There are many data scientists that are completely focused on having this data-driven approach, a metric-based view on customer insights. And we have all these agents as well that are directly in contact with the customers and that have conversations with them, that have structured interviews, that collect qualitative data and turn it into valuable end user feedback. And that goes beyond just NPS. So as you can see, there are many different dimensions of what it means to be customer-centric, and it really depends on what team you ask. Now, there are pitfalls to this approach as well. So this is such a spectrum of customer centrism. What we also see is that since each team is so focused on optimizing their part of customer experience, so we have an amazing marketing team that is doing their best to immerse themselves, a great sales team that is drawing everyone in. There's an onboarding team ready that makes onboarding as easy as possible, et cetera, et cetera. And what we see is that while these loose bits and pieces are really good, the gaps between them, so the gap between marketing and sales, the gap between acquisition and onboarding, the gap between onboarding and product experience, that is where trouble sometimes arises. Because when teams don't collaborate with each other in large organizations or in small organizations, we get what we call a fragmented customer journey. So what we see is that we are losing customers in the gaps between these silos, the silo of onboarding and the silo of product experience. So while we have a great trend that is the customer-centric trend that is very beneficial to serving customers, we also have this specialization within each silo in the customer journey that is causing gaps between those teams, that actually degrade the customer journey. So we have a problem, a recent problem. This is something that wasn't very much known, let's say 10, 15 years ago. But right now there are lots of companies that face this problem and that make it measurable as well. And an answer to this situation, or at least part of the answer, could be to create what is called a customer journey transformation that has a journey-centric perspective. So what that means is we align all these teams that we were just talking about. We have the sales teams, the marketing teams, we have acquisition, onboarding, product experience, all the way to the teams that are responsible for retention and offboarding. And we align them around the customer journey. So the journey is central. And what that brings is it bridges those gaps between the teams that are working in the customer journey. Now, how you do this is completely unique for each and every organization. It depends on how big your teams are, how many teams you have, what your strategic goals are. But what we see is that there are some archetypical components to a journey-centric customer experience that return. And you can see them in this diagram as well. They're mainly in the second left column, the agile technology that is needed, the collaboration that is required, those teams working together, having adequate and behavioral-based customer insights, and also having the right process architecture to make sure that you can transform your organization to be journey-centric. So it sounds like quite an undertaking, and it is, because it's a major transformation for big organizations especially. That requires quite a lot of change management, that requires quite a lot of strategic thinking and project management as well. But it could definitely be worth it because those gaps between the silos are a big problem in customer experience. And by being able to bridge those gaps, you get a lot of increase in profitability and customer retention and in innovation and overall in building a better relationship with your customers throughout your teams and organization. So let's dive a bit deeper into that. We have these components, these archetypical components that are quite common in having journey-centric transformations. We have collaboration, and with that I mean cross-departmental collaboration. We want all the teams around the customer journey, the customer-facing teams, to work together, to frequently collaborate. We want a process architecture that integrates key customer journeys, because the bigger a company is, often the more customer journeys they have and they want to integrate. And they all need to follow some type of framework so that they are compatible with each other, so that the teams can actually collaborate. We need agile technology. We need an approach that invites data, that uses data to its utmost extent, but doesn't limit itself only to data. We want the data to be integrated into a whole. We want the customer teams in the front end that are more responsible for UI and UX to be aligned with the back ends that are more focused on APIs, for example. And then there's customer insights. We really want evidence-based customer insight at each stage of the journey. This is actually where my field comes in and where my expertise is as well. What do we know about customer decisions? What do we know about customer behavior? How can we predict it? And how can we make sure that we design experiences that match their expectations at each stage of the journey? And how can we make sure that we teach the teams that are around the journey to use those insights to their best extent? Okay, this sounds like quite a mouthful, I understand. So we're going to dive a bit deeper into each of those components. And I want to do that by using this case study. It's a case study that is quite recent, and it describes a collaboration between Nissan, who you know from the cars, and Forrester, big consultancy firm. And they embarked on a journey together to create a journey-centric operating model for Nissan. So basically what that means is they made that transformation, they organized all the teams around the customer journey, and they did everything that is necessary to create this integrated journey-centric model of serving their customers. So we're going to dissect this case a little bit, and if you want to, you can find this case online. It's open source. You can also send me an email. I'll send the whole case study to you. It's really interesting, and especially if you are in CX or in any type of customer-facing field, this is definitely one that you are going to get a lot of valuable takeaways from. And I'm going to use it as a guiding thread to break down this framework of journey-centric operating models for customer experience. Okay, so the objective, this one's subjective, but this should be the objectives for each company that undertakes a journey-centric transformation, is twofold, actually. It's about being able to better serve your customers, so growing your customer base, making sure that they have the most comfortable and best experience in the journey that they can, which will also reduce a lot of costs, because those gaps that I was talking about between onboarding and product experience, between sales and marketing, when customers fall into that, you can either lose them or they will have to call customer service, for example. They will have to email, they will draw resources from the customer facing teams, which always result in additional costs. A colleague of mine that in the field that now works at Ogilvy actually completely dissected this at a client she worked with, and found that a call to the customer service desk costs about $15 per call. So can you imagine if you have these gaps in the customer journey where customers are calling service or are just dropping out fully, what the opportunity costs this can be. So first and foremost, it's about better serving customers, boosting the way in which they retain, in which they're loyal, in which retention is being held throughout the customer journey. But then there's an internal component to this as well. And it is called a journey-centric transformation. And the reason for that is it's a big change to an organization. It requires quite some change management. And of course, you can make this as big or as small as you want, but it requires an organization to become more agile, to become more adaptive into responding to customer needs. Because what we have seen is that the way in which customer expectations are formed and the way that customers expect service and product is transforming. It's something that is very dynamic. So we need a company to abandon legacy operating models, to abandon old ways of working, and to transform into an agile operating model that really is able to respond fast to customer needs. So it's twofold, right? It's external and it's internal. And here on the left, we see this diagram of how Nissan envisioned this, how they wanted to integrate these customer journeys into one integrated operating model. Delay here. There we go. All right. We had a small problem with the audio, but if everything is well, it should be working again. If someone can confirm that in the chat, then we are good to go. All right, let's see. Yes, I think we're definitely good to go. Just a second here. Okay, so let's break down what a journey-centric operating model or a journey-centric customer experience means by these four components, part by part. So we have, first and foremost, the importance of cross-departmental team collaboration. We really want to be able to make sure that all teams, all customer-facing teams around the customer journey are collaborating to the best of their extent. That means knowledge sharing, that means regular collaboration, that means communicating, and that requires a bit of vision, that requires a bit of top-down buy-in. We want executives and we want leadership teams to be able to clearly and consistently communicate to all of these teams why we are doing this, why are we taking a step towards a journey-centric operating model, why do we want customer experience to be journey-centric, and craft that into a vision that demonstrates why we're doing it, what the costs are going to be, but also what it's going to give us in return. This will generate buy-in also at the leadership level. If this vision exists, it draws in more leaders, but it will also make sure that the teams are on the same page as to why we're doing this. We also want stakeholders that have the responsibility and the accountability to coordinate these cross-functional teams. These are often called journey managers. And what we see, for example, in the Nissan case as well, is that they appointed senior leaders as journey managers of these cross-functional teams. So they appoint stakeholders that already have authority, that already have a lot of influence, to coordinate not just one team, not just onboarding or just product experience, but both of those teams, or maybe even more, so that we have these overlaying arcs of governance in the customer journey, which makes it a lot easier for teams to collaborate because they're reporting to the same stakeholders. And together, they also want to make sure that they build some type of framework in which they can collaborate and measure progress. Of course, again, this is a big transformation, especially if you imagine a company like Nissan, which is gigantic. How can you make sure that there is one framework in which all the customer-facing teams are working in which the journeys are built, in which the journeys are created? So a question to all of you would be, if you look at your own company, no matter how big or small or how many people are there or in what sector you work, if you were to be interested in a journey-centric approach to customer experience, who would your journey managers be? It could be you. It could be that you do all this. It could be that you have certain managers in mind. It could also be that you have someone in mind that you would hire externally, for example. But this is a question that you could start thinking about if you want to have this collaboration across the customer journey. Now, let's talk a bit about process and process architecture. We want to make sure that an undertaking as big as a journey-centric transformation has some standardized components to it. You want to make sure that there's enough project management to support this transformation, to support journey teams, especially if you look at a company like Nissan, which is a multinational. You want to make sure that all the countries are working in the same way, that they have the resources that they need to integrate customer journeys, to start collaborating with each other. We want to have a unified roadmap, actually, that helps them create those key customer journeys, or if they already have those customer journeys, integrate them into one place. Again, we are all doing this, if you want to simplify it completely, to make sure that there are no gaps in the customer journey. This is the main problem. And if you have a unified roadmap, it's going to become a lot easier to spot gaps and bridge gaps. With that being said, you don't want to standardize and unify everything, because context will matter a great deal. Your clients, maybe they are based in different countries, maybe they have different demographic or psychographic profiles, maybe they have wildly different goals while interacting with your service and products. You want to be able to map those contextual differences, but you want to do that in a way in which first there is some structure. So you have a roadmap that unifies the approach, that unifies customer journeys, and from there, you want to be able to make sure that you can also take those contextual differences into account. In the case of Nissan, that would be that they sell all over the world. So a journey that a customer in Japan, for example, would undertake is going to be similar to a journey that someone in Germany would undertake, but there are also going to be some contextual differences, both in customer behavior and also in the objective journey that they make. So make sure that you give and empower the people that you have to make sure that they take that into account, offer standardization, but also offer flexibility. So that would be a question. Like you have different customers, maybe you have different customer journeys. What are these contextual differences? Where do they differ from each other? Where do journeys diverge? And how can you make sure that that is taken into account? Because if you can see it and spot it, you can integrate it into a whole. I want to talk about the technology part as well, and I have to disclaim, this is not my powerhouse. I'm a psychologist and a behavioral scientist, but this is definitely something that we do integrate into these types of transformations and these types of change management, because technology is one of the main drivers of success here when we talk about journey-centric customer experience. So what you want to be doing, and this is something that you want to do with every type of big change that you're undertaking, is to continuously develop the metrics that you're using for success. So how quick you're transforming, how well you're serving your customers, and make sure that they link to the return of investment in some way. Again, this is a risky undertaking. This is a big change. And as you know, like the statistics, the old Kandler statistics, they say things like 70% of the organizational change ends up failing or succeeding. So make sure that there's a clear link to ROI at all times. Make sure that you develop your metrics on the go, and make sure that they offer not just you, but also the people that you're working with, and especially the senior leaders in your organization, a clear view of this is where we were last week, this is what we've done, and this is where we're going. And these metrics can give a solid body and a solid drive as well to keeping this project going. More in the operational side, you want to be able to align back-end technology with customer-facing teams and customer-facing operations. So we have all these amazing teams on the front end that work in design, in UX, in conversion optimization, in user interface design. They need data in order to test their hypotheses, to optimize the way in which clients perceive products. And what we often see is that these teams on the front end are just not talking enough to the teams at the back end. We have our developers, we have our data scientists. They're doing an amazing job at the back end of the company. They have all the information that is needed to create great front-end customer experiences, but the two teams are just not talking enough. So how can you, what I always got is, I got aligning APIs with UIs. How can you make sure that the teams at the back end are talking to the teams at the front end? And how can you make sure that technology is also allowing for this? How can you make sure that it's comprehensible for teams in the front end, that they can make sense out of big data sets, that they can derive key insights from that, and that they can turn those into optimizations on the front end? And the same way goes the other way around, right? If we have valuable customer feedback on the front end that customer-facing teams collect, how can we make sure that this is quantifiable in the back end, that there is a clear flow of information where there's no noise and no bias, that the back end can use to update what is happening there, the tech stack, the tools that might be needed, so that it's a cyclic thing. These two teams need to be in contact all the time, and technology needs to be able to facilitate that. And the last one is a bit more of an operational thing as well. If you work in a technological and data-driven way, there are going to be a lot of data. There are going to be a lot of numbers. There are going to be a lot of dashboards. There are going to be a lot of reports with a lot of digits, basically. So how can you make sure that you don't lose sight and succumb to analysis paralysis? And of course, there are many psychological strategies to deal with this, but what we've also seen is that technologically, the idea of having smart dashboards, and the picture that you see is definitely not an example of a smart dashboard, because I'm not a dashboarding expert myself, but what you want to be able to present is a comprehensive overview of metrics, where we're going, what the progress is, that is comprehensible for each stakeholder that is working on this. So again, we have our leadership that is driving a journey-centric transformation. They need to be able to understand it. We have our customer-facing teams on the front end that are directly in touch with customers and are designing the experiences. We need them to be able to understand it and to immediately derive takeaways. And we also need this to be informative for the back end. So how can you create one place, or maybe two or three, but how can you create a singular piece of technology that is used to inform everyone that is working around the customer journey? And to make this very practical, there are these questions that you can ask everyone that is working there. For example, what is your team's magic metric? I'm also wondering, anyone that's listening to this or is listening to the recording, what do you use to measure success, to measure progress? What is your magic metric? Is it different for different teams? You can use the chat as well if you want to inform me on this. This is something that you want to be asking yourself all the time, because as I just said as well, you want to be continuously developing and updating your magic metric, or just your full dashboard, basically. So let's move into something that is comfortable for me to share as an expert on human behavior, namely the customer insights. So this is something that relies heavily on the psychology of your customers, and it relies heavily on the behavior of your customers as well. And luckily, there's an entire science that can help you derive customer insights, that can help you distill customer insights, and that can help turn customer insights into improved customer experience. And of course, I cannot give the full breakdown here, because this would be a very long webinar, but we're going to give a real quick top-down introduction on this as well. And there are a couple of things that you want to be keeping in mind when it comes down to customer insights. There will be feedback, whether you are recording it or not, or whether you're serious about integrating customer feedback. Your customers will be talking to you. They will be giving you signs of how they are experiencing the way in which your products and services are appealing to them. There will be ways in which they will let you know what their thoughts are. So make sure that you collect this. And what I would say is go beyond NPS. I'll go a bit deeper into that later. Make sure you use that to identify barriers and chances for optimization. Also, as journeys are different, and there could be different journeys in one journey-centric operating model, you will also have different target audiences. There will be personas or segments in your target audience. And what we have learned, especially in the past 10 to 15 years of behavioral science, is that demographic segmentation is not the most optimal way to approach target audience, because demographics are valuable, but they do not give enough information of what is driving different segments of customers. So also I will go into that a bit deeper now. And the third one is about testing these customer insights at each stage of the journey. So there are all these, they are often called behavioral insights. They're sometimes called cognitive biases. They're phenomena in the human consciousness, in the human cognition, and in human behavior that are quite universal and quite predictable. They will tell you about why a person chooses product A instead of product B. They will tell you why a client sees too much risk in option A and wants to go for option B. And if you can collect these insights and if you can use them to create better experiences for your customers, then you will be more behaviorally informed. You will be more human-centric automatically. So let's dive a bit deeper into these 3 points. First of which is about the data that you collect. So as I said, NPS is a great metric, and you have different types of NPS as well, but it doesn't give you the full picture, because basically what NPS does, it is giving you an impression of how likely customers or employees are to recommend a service, product, or job to another. And this zooms in on intention, on what unconscious thinking, but there's also a lot of subconscious thinking and a lot of actions that can be measured by NPS. So what you want to do is you want to collect qualitative data as well. You want to talk to your customers, but you want to do this in a structured way. You don't want to just have coffees with everyone and have a completely free-flowing conversation, because it's going to cost you a lot of time. It will still be valuable. But if you can somehow structure the conversations that you or your employees are having with your customers, you will be able to derive qualitative data from that. And that will give you a lot of deep insight into what customers are feeling, what customers are expecting, and how customers are reacting to your service and products. Then there is behavioral data, especially when you're working in a company that has an online component to it, even more so when you're working in a SaaS company, a software as a service company. There will be a lot of measurable behavior of your customers and your users that you can collect. For where do they click, where do they look, how long are they on the page, how long are they stuck. Sometimes you can even work with heat maps if you have the access to do those types of research. And this will give you all this qualitative and also very objective data about how customers are interacting with your products and services. So this is going to give you a lot of basic knowledge about what to do, where we are now, and how to interact with customers. And again, this is not about sweeping NPS off the table. This is about complementing NPS with different types of metrics. Make sure that you continuously update your metrics. And a question that I always ask here is, are you guilty of NPS hacking? And if you have never heard of NPS hacking before, you can Google this. And there are many smart ways in which companies are either intentionally or unintentionally biasing the way that they collect NPS data in their favor. So make sure that you are not solely relying on NPS. Let's talk about segmentation a bit more, because as I just said, demographics are valuable, but they are not enough to paint an accurate picture of who your customers are. An answer to that has been researched quite thoroughly in the past 10 to 15 years are behavioral-based personas, or psychographic personas, or psychographic segmentation. Basically, what it comes down to is that you segment your audience based on behavior and based on psychological traits of your customers. And here on the right, you can see an image of how this has been done with a client in the financial industry. Where we looked at the behavior of different traders in their audience. And what we noticed is that the two factors that were key here were the control over outcomes and the need for targeted information. So these were the two main drivers for customer behavior. And we segmented this into 4 quadrants and derived 4 personas from this. So questions that you could use to, and of course, I mean, I'm explaining this very quickly and very high over what this is quite a complicated topic. And you can find a lot of additional research on this simply by Googling. But to get this started, to take that first step, What you will want to do is find out what are the personas that live in my customer base, and what are their unique risks and needs. What can the data and the conversations that I have with them tell me about them? Are they people that tend to avoid risk, or are they quite risk-seeking? Are they people that value autonomy very much and freedom of choice, or are they people that want to be guided into decision making? And by identifying these psychographic factors, these behavioral factors, you'll be able to create personas or segment in a way that is a lot more specific, a lot more evidence-based, and in the end, a lot more effective, because it will give you a true representation of who your clients are. Now, to go to the last one, and then I also want to round off this flow of information that I've been sending your way: customer insights or behavioral insights. Now, I know that some of you have heard of cognitive biases before. There are these patterns in our behavior that influence our decision-making in irrational ways, but also in predictable ways. So we have all these quirks, all these shortcuts in our brains that makes our behavior a bit weird, but also quite predictable from time to time. And there are over 300 cognitive biases that should be known by every UX designer, at least the key ones of them. But there are some of them that are lending themselves especially well to creating better customer experiences, and especially through the eyes of the customer. And my favorite one of those is the peak end rule. And now I know that some of you have been to IKEA before, and I know that probably some of you have had either a hot dog or a veggie dog in their journey in the IKEA. And I want you to remember, at what moment did you have this hot dog or veggie dog in your journey? Was it when you came in? Was it somewhere halfway? Or was it somewhere at the very end? And then, yeah, I see that, and this is every time that we pose this question, it's very unanimous. At the end of your journey in the IKEA, you're offered a very good deal on a veggie dog or a hot dog. And the reason for this is because of the peak end rule. It's a cognitive bias that dictates that we remember experiences not fully, but by their peaks and their ends. And so look at your brain in this way, to give you a metaphor like a hard drive. And from the hard drive, instead of taking the whole file, we're just taking the peaks and the ends when we recall something. Now, IKEA knows this very well. So they don't want the end of your experience to be you paying at the cash register quite a lot of money because you got all these beds and closets and whatever you need for your house. They want the last part of the experience to be you remembering that great deal on that hot dog, because they know this will disproportionately influence the way in which you remember your experience at IKEA. So these types of insights, right? The peak end rule, we want customer-facing teams in every stage of the customer journey to be aware of this. This is absolutely key for marketeers. This is absolutely key for sales reps. This is 100% key for onboarding specialists, for product experience specialists. They have to know this, because if you can have a peak end after every stage in the customer journey, then the whole will be remembered a lot better. Each segment or component will be perceived like more fun, like more memorable, as a better experience because of this. And also it will compound into a big increase into how people perceive the customer journey. So these are insights that we want teams throughout the customer journey to know. This is a key component of having a journey-centric operating model. We want this knowledge to be spread. Now, to give you one more example of the peak end rule, and the peak end rule is one of these insights, and there are over 300 that you can implement. Spotify, who's also doing this very well in a different way, namely they have a playlist that is called the Goodbye for Now playlist by Spotify. And you get this when you cancel your subscription. So you are no longer a client. You are at the stage of the customer journey that would be called the offboarding stage, where we are actually not retaining a client, we're losing one. But they still managed to put a peak end rule into this, namely by sending this playlist. And if you see the titles of the songs here in the screen, it will form "If you leave us now, you'll take away the biggest part of us," which is a lot of fun. So there's also a humor effect here. But what is also happening is this is so remarkable and so unusual that I am sharing it in the webinar. A lot of people are sharing it because you can share this playlist, of course, with their peers. And what it's basically doing is it's turning customers that have been through the whole journey and decided to offboard, to no longer be a client. It's turning them into marketeers. So it's bringing them into a completely different journey, and it's creating value, not just for Spotify, but also for people that maybe not had a great experience, but now do have a really fun end to their experience. So make sure that if you Google things like cognitive biases in customer experience, behavioral insights in customer experience, you're going to find so many things to experiment with. You don't need to be a psychologist or a behavioral scientist for this. You just have to go on the internet and start experimenting. And I put a lot of emphasis on experiment, because you don't want to take these insights and just copy paste them because Spotify did it, it should work with us. The human behavior is a bit too complicated for that. So you want to experiment. You want to test it first. You want to put it in your own context and see if it makes sense. And if it does, you can scale it. So that's definitely a call for experimentation there. Now, this is something that we do behind the scenes as well. I don't have all these 200, 300 plus cognitive biases in the back of my head. We structure them in databases. We help our clients implement them in the customer journey in a structured way as well. But these types of information you can also find. You can find it everywhere. So I would definitely, before you go hire expensive consultants, go out in the wild and get your fill, because you'll definitely be able to experiment with this. Now, if you have done that and you still need help, this is something that we help organizations achieve as well. These customer-centric experiences, these journey-centric operating models, these behavioral insights that can be applied. So by all means, feel free to reach out to us. There will definitely be a way in which we can help you achieve your goals when it comes to customer behavior or another behavioral challenge as well. As we said, where behavior is, we try to be as well. And with that, I would ask you a question, and then I would also go over into the Q&A, and I will stop the screen recording so that you can ask me some questions as well. But my question to you is, what is your biggest journey challenge? Is it collaboration? Is it process? Is it technology? Is it insights? Or is it something else? Where do your biggest challenges lie? How can you identify them? How can you find them? And where do you think that you're going to improve upon them? So take that into the back of your mind. You can always reach out to me and share your answer with me. I'll be really, really interested to read it. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention and your interest and your energy today. And I will see you back at another webinar somewhere in the near future. Thank you.